Welcome back, folks. It's finally time to talk about this film. Resident Evil, the final chapter. Everything that we've ever seen has been leading up to this point. And I have been wanting to talk about this film. It's the whole point of this Resident Evil film franchise. And I felt this film deserved my covering the previous 5 films because it relies on the previous 5 films for all of the stuff I'm going to shit on this film for. Not that the first 5 films were excellent, Oscar-worthy performances by any means, but they were entertaining, they were enjoyable. The first film was consistently decent all the way through, with some questionable things thrown in. But you can throw out the questionable things to ignorance. The second film had some scenes that I liked more than the first film. It had some scenes I didn't like more than the first film. There was a lot of questionable plot choices, but overall it felt like a solid sequel to the first film, and it didn't really ignore anything. It just built upon the first film like a proper sequel should. The third film, Resident Evil Extinction, did not expand upon the second film in the same way. It dropped a lot of plot points, primarily the Abigail Ashford / Dr. Ashford plotline. The origins of the T-virus and all of that stuff were discarded. There were some plot points that were picked up, such as Carlos Oliveira and LJ rejoining the cast for the sequel. It picked up on some stuff, but it dropped other things, and it made some questionable plot choices, but overall it was an enjoyable film. The fourth film was far more enjoyable than anything that we've seen previously, but that's just because of my subjective love for schlock. It was entertaining all the way through. There was some crazy shit happening. The Axeman was very enjoyable. It was very satisfying to watch that. Claire Redfield was back. Chris Redfield finally made his appearance, and it wasn't disappointing. Well, it was a little bit disappointing, because, Alice has to win, but the whole thing with Wesker, the whole battle, the finale, all of it was very entertaining. It was enjoyable. The fifth film, there was a lot of questionable antics going on, but overall, I didn't hate it. It discarded a lot of stuff, like the Redfield siblings. We ask where they are. Luther West comes back, so apparently Afterlife had to have happened, right? Luther West is here, so if he's here, where are the Redfield siblings? Did the Red Queen capture them too? We don't know. They're just written out of the story until it's convenient to bring one of them back. And the fifth one is fine. There was the daughter clone character, and the finale. The finale, it's set up that they went to the White House where Wesker was president of the remainder of the free world. There was an army gathered here to fend off an army of the undead and mutants and all that shit, and it was like preparing for one of the coolest finales that would have ever been made. It would have been the Pacific Rim meets Transformers, directed by Michael Bay and J.J. Abrams, and all of the epic schlock that you could ever hope to imagine would have been built up in this finale. It would have been amazing. It would have been the Avengers Endgame of the Resident Evil films. Everybody was going to come back. The Redfield siblings, Jill Valentine, Leon Kennedy, Ada Wong, Wesker's even there. It was going to be amazing. And I thought it was going to be. I had so many expectations for this film. I have been waiting for this final film for years. There was a long gap in between Resident Evil Retribution and the final chapter. There was a very long gap. I don't know why. Maybe because people were fed up with these films and they weren't performing well, and Retribution was just the last straw, and decided we're not going to make any more of these films. And if I knew that they were going to make the final chapter be like this, I probably would have preferred they never finished. because that finale, I could at least have some headcanon about what happened, and at least satisfy myself with a headcanon finale. Because I would have preferred a headcanon finale over what we got. But that's probably just creative differences. It's probably just I wanted something different, but the director/writer wanted something else. But it's like, over the course of this franchise, it's like the writer couldn't decide what he even wanted with this story. He kept changing his mind. He kept dropping plot points and adding new plot points. It's probably why Apocalypse is the best sequel to a film in this franchise, because Extinction is not a good sequel to Apocalypse. Afterlife is not a good sequel to Extinction. Retribution is not a good sequel to Afterlife. Apocalypse is a decent sequel to the first one. The final chapter is a shit sequel to Retribution. Not that Retribution is an amazing gem of a movie either, but at least it had some schlock in it that I could really get behind and enjoy. And it had a finale that I was expecting an amazing, epic final battle. Just an hour and a half, 88 minutes to 90 minutes, that's all you needed. Just an epic hour and a half of epic action, bringing everybody back. Everybody would have something to do. You didn't need to worry about any form of character growth, because you had 5 films to not have character growth in anyway, so we're not expecting much. But I was expecting something amazing, you know? And like maybe this massive mutation or whatever of the Red Queen's a big cyber chip, the mother hive mind, with all these things, and we had to shut that down and all that shit, and I was expecting something awesome to happen. But what actually happened, what we actually got, was so disappointing. It was so disappointing. So all of that, all of the characters, all of the survivors, all of that, I have just restored your powers, that happened at the end of Retribution, well, you could forget all of that. You could forget all of that. Everybody's dead. Alice is the only survivor. It's the next day, and everybody died. Apparently off-screen, this massive mutacious monster showed up, and it killed everybody. Alice's daughter clone, Jill Valentine, Leon Kennedy, Ada Wong, everybody. Albert Wesker appears to have betrayed the human race, and everybody that had been gathered here to survive have all been killed. They're all dead now. Yippee. So Alice wakes up in the rubble of Washington, D.C., the White House ruins, and she manages to make her way across the wasteland, fighting some mutacious flying monster, and then she makes her way into some sort of fucking warehouse where the Red Queen has some sort of fucking device where it talks to Alice and says that there's approximately a couple thousand people left in the world. They're all going to die soon because Dr. Isaacs, who actually isn't dead, is planning some fucking thing alongside Albert Wesker, and some fucking thing is going to happen. And Alice is like, but I killed Dr. Isaacs. And it's like, oh no, you killed a clone. This Dr. Isaacs is the real Dr. Isaacs. And he's having some dumb plans to destroy the world, and Wesker's going to cast the kill switch. And, oh, fucking dumb shits. And Wesker has fled to the Raccoon City Hive, in the ruins of Raccoon City, because apparently there's some underground stuff that was beneath the hive itself. You know, the hive is underground, but there's stuff under the hive, a hive under the hive that we didn't know about, that the cyber commandos from the first film didn't know about. When they showed us the whole blueprints of the hive, there was another hive beneath that they didn't know about, that nobody knows about except the Umbrella High Command, as they call it, the High Command. Apparently, they believed the world was going to destroy itself. The human race was doomed to destroy itself because they were incapable of getting along, they were incapable of working together, and they were just going to kill each other. They were just going to kill each other, everybody's going to die, they were going to exhaust all the resources because nobody knows how to use resources sustainably, everybody eats to excess, everybody uses resources and fuel to excess, and then they just run out of everything and everybody dies. That's what the Umbrella High Command realized was going to happen to the human race. So the Red Queen explains that, oh, we had a kill switch thing planned, kind of like the Thanos snap thing. They were going to stage an apocalypse where everybody dies except for a group of survivors that they put into an ark beneath the Raccoon City hive. The Umbrella High Command and the people that they have decided get to ride out the apocalypse in, like, cryostasis. Once everybody dies, and then once all the zombies die out from lack of food and all that shit, excuse me, they were going to be awoken from cryostasis to repopulate the world into a new world order. That's what the Umbrella High Command plans. And, in a way, I could agree with the human race being on the road to bullshit. Because, despite my ideals of people just working together, it's like people are incapable of working together. So, all of this is just some doomer-jaded stuff that the human race is doomed to destroy itself. I like to be optimistic and think that we can be a little bit better. I like to think that maybe we can work together eventually in the future. We could just put our differences aside for the common good of survival of our species, you know? But, I don't know. People are selfish. I'm selfish. And Raccoon City's High Command of the Umbrella are very selfish. And they believed that the human race was not going to be this optimistic, idealistic idea that we have, and that they were just going to die off. They didn't want to take the risk of waiting to see if we could be better. They just took actions because they had no hope in us, and they were also greedy as fuck, and they wanted to make all the decisions and control the world. So they have access to all this cloning technology, so they can just make clones. They have, like, the DNA for, like, all of their employees. Like, they could just make clones of people. If people get too old, they make a clone, a younger clone, to just do the shit for them. Wesker was deemed to be chairman of Umbrella while the rest of Umbrella High Command was in cryostasis because apparently Wesker is just a busboy. He just happens to be a high-class busboy to the Umbrella High Command. Which is also a shit on the Wesker character. This film shits on the Wesker character so hard. Resident Evil Afterlife and Retribution at least did Wesker justice. I liked that Wesker. But this one, the final chapter's Wesker, they shit so hard on this character. I almost feel sorry for him. I feel sorry for Wesker in this movie. He is treated like a little bitch. So Alice goes out into the wastelands to head towards Raccoon City to stop this doomsday that the Red Queen says is going to happen, because the Red Queen apparently is on Alice's side now. Despite being the bad guy in Retribution, Paul, what's going on there? Ooh, wait for the twist. Okay, so she's on the highway heading towards Raccoon City, and then she gets kidnapped. You know, she gets into a trap. She falls into a trap and gets picked up by Dr. Isaacs in a sort of convoy. 2 massive, mega military tanks, and behind these tanks is an army of the undead. They're herding towards Raccoon City to kill off the survivors for reasons unknown. Because you'll see why in a moment. Because this Dr. Isaacs, there's something about him. So this Dr. Isaacs believes he's the real Dr. Isaacs, and that the Dr. Isaacs that you met in Extinction, that Alice killed, was just a clone, programmed to believe he was the real Dr. Isaacs. But all along, this one was the real Dr. Isaacs. He was the real one. You were thrown for a loop. What a twist. But since we've seen Retribution, and we've seen all of the Cyber Commandos and Carlos Oliveira, and the Alice clones, all that shit, since we know that cloning is commonplace, we're not surprised that they would do it with Dr. Isaacs as well. So Dr. Isaacs is a clone. Well, the one from Extinction is a clone. Who else is a clone? Well, we'll just have to find out. We've continue our story with Alice breaking free from Dr. Isaacs' capture and steals a motorcycle and drives ahead of the convoy to head into Raccoon City before Dr. Isaacs. Because apparently she has to get there to stop the Doomsday. She has to stop Wesker from unleashing the Doomsday. There's some survivors in Raccoon City for some dumb reason, arbitrary. So close to the hive, you'd think that the Umbrella people would be like, oh, there's some survivors here, let's blow them up. But nah, no, okay. So there's survivors here, and apparently Claire Redfield's here because the reasons. She wasn't in Retribution. She vanished off of that massive ship alongside Chris Redfield and Kmart and all the other survivors. And we just presumed them to be dead. But nope, Claire Redfield's not dead. She swam to shore and found her way back to Raccoon City for reasons. And she hooked up with this dude here, and they're working for something. Everybody outside of Claire Redfield and the dude that she's in a relationship with are just one-note, barely anything characters. They're there to die. That's it. They're there to die. Because in these films, we have to have a body count. We make sacrificial pawn-type characters with the barest of bare traits so that we don't have to worry about them for too long. Because they're not going to be around for too long for you to care about them, to have any sort of growth. They're there to die. To have gruesome death scenes. It's nothing new. We've seen this since the 80s. We've seen them since the 70s. Sacrificial pawn characters, right? So, without trying to break your brain, wondering how Claire Redfield's here and wondering where Chris Redfield is, because you can wonder in vain all you like on where Chris is. He's not in this movie. Alice teams up with survivors, and they have to fend off Dr. Isaacs and his 2 mega tank trucks and the army of the undead behind the trucks. They have to fend off a siege of the undead and all that shit, so they get all sorts of weapons and shit built up. And when the undead show up, arbitrary action follows. Fire, pew, pew, pew. Some of the survivors die. But they manage to fend off Dr. Isaacs. But Dr. Isaacs survives. And Alice realizes, we have to get to that Umbrella Hive before the Doomsday thing that Wesker's gonna do. We don't know what he's gonna do, but we gotta stop him. We gotta stop him. So she and the handful of survivors, including Claire Redfield, go into the Raccoon City Hive, and on the way, one by one, the survivors die in various ways of arbitrary action extending the film, because there's nothing happening. There's nothing of merit happening here. They're just arbitrary action of an obstacle course of various things that Wesker's sending at these people to kill them, and one by one, the survivors die. And then it's just Alice, Claire, and the leader of the pack dude that Claire seems to be in a relationship with. Well, the leader of the pack dude betrays them. Surprise! He's been working for Umbrella all along. And then Wesker reveals that he's just a busboy, and there's Dr. Isaacs sitting in the desk chair, but it's not the Dr. Isaacs we've been seeing in this film up until now. No, it's another Dr. Isaacs, and it's not the Dr. Isaacs from Resident Evil Extinction. We killed that Dr. Isaacs. This is another Dr. Isaacs. This is the real Dr. Isaacs. What a twist. We double entendred you. We triple entendred you. The Resident Evil 3 Dr. Isaacs was a clone. The Dr. Isaacs from the first half of this film was a clone. And you, Alice, you are a clone. Everybody's a fucking clone. So Dr. Isaacs explains his grand evil plan, and he tells them he's put some evolution shit in his body that he can anticipate everybody's moves so that he can survive and do all this dumb shit because he can predict the future for some arbitrary reason of human evolution and all that stuff. Alice tries to fight him, but he keeps predicting and all that shit. Wesker tries to do something, but he's completely useless, and he gets crushed by a fucking door. The Deacon dude from the fucking leader of the Resistance dude that Claire was in a relationship with, he's fucking dead. He does nothing. He dies after betraying them. And Claire's like, Alice, we gotta blah, 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 blah. And Alice is like, you need to get out of here before the place explodes. And Claire's like, blah, 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 blah. And Alice is like, no, you gotta leave. I gotta stay and finish this. So Alice stays and finishes this by realizing that she's a clone, and there's another Alice, the real Alice. The real Alice is like a couple years old, but she has been cursed with like the Methuselah thing. You know, that progeria. I think that's what it's called, progeria. It's where a child rapidly ages. By the time they're a teenager, they look like a geriatric. Their skin is old and very thin, and their bodies become frail. And if they make it into their 20s, they're really old looking now. It's rapid degeneration of the body. That's what the real Alice has, and she happens to be the daughter of the founder of the Umbrella Company, who was Dr. Isaacs' partner. Dr. Isaacs becomes majority shareholder because reasons, and he tries to do this fucking apocalypse thing for reasons. He cannot kill the real Alice because she's still a shareholder, an employee of Umbrella, blah blah blah, which is very dumb, which is very stupid, because apparently you can't kill board members or something, which is really fucking dumb. Because in the previous film, you know, the director man he killed Dr. Ashford. Was he a board member? Well, actually, the inventor of the T-virus was not Dr. Ashford. See, they completely discarded Apocalypse by this point. It's like Apocalypse hasn't even happened. The only thing that happened at Apocalypse was that a nuke fell on Raccoon City. All the plot points between Abigail Ashford and Dr. Ashford, the director man, and all of that shit, you might as well just forget about it. You might as well just drop that entire plot point, because they dropped it by Resident Evil Extinction, the whole Dr. Ashford thing. That was the one thing I really liked about Apocalypse. Well, the things that you like about this series likes to drop by the next film. That's what it does. It's set up to disappoint you. That's what it does. It disappoints you. So the Dr. Ashford fucking thing is gone, and there's a new T-virus origin explanation, and it turns out that the real Alice was the Abigail Ashford all along. Surprise! And the real Alice tells the clone Alice, who doesn't have progeria, to be like, you can do this, Alice. You gotta stop him. Blah 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 yabba dabba dooba. So Alice stops the Dr. Isaacs character. The Dr. Isaacs gets killed by his clone, because his clone goes like, "You're not the real me. I'm the real me." And Dr. Isaacs goes, "You're just programmed to believe you're me, you idiot." And then the other Dr. Isaacs goes, what if you're the one programmed to believe you're me, and I'm the one who knows I'm me? And then there's the fucking fuck. And then the zombies attack, and then Dr. Isaacs, both of them fucking die. And Alice pulls the kill switch to kill all of the zombies and all the mutants. Everybody, all the zombies die worldwide. And then Alice wakes up. Claire Redfield's there and says, you did it, Alice! And Alice is like, yeah, I did it. And the film fucking ends. Oh my gosh. I'm almost on the verge of fucking tears how disappointed I am in this film. Oh, it does so many things wrong. It just discards everything that they have been building this entire time. And he just rewrites the entire fucking franchise in a single film. He rewrites everything in a single film. He just says, just forget everything that you've ever done, and here's a new thing instead. And it's just I didn't like this film, as if you can imagine. I really didn't like the final chapter. There's so many things it does wrong. It kills off all of the interesting characters. And Chris is still MIA, probably KIA. Claire is the only person who returns, yet Claire does nothing in this film yet again. Claire is probably just as useless in this film as she was in Extinction, if not more so. She's only there to be like, remember her? She was from the games, and she exists. But at least she doesn't go out like a bitch like Albert Wesker did. Wesker deserved better. I would have been fine if you made him betray Alice in the party. I would have been fine if you did that in the final chapter, but make him the big bad. Dr. Isaacs didn't need to come back. He died in Extinction. Leave him a rotting corpse in the Mojave Hive, and just have an epic final battle and finish this fucking thing already. You didn't have to rewrite this entire franchise and try to give Alice some sudden backstory that wasn't needed. All this that you did. It is what it is. This is the final chapter. And what a disappointing end to an otherwise schlocky, entertaining franchise. And the sad thing is, if I were to ever marathon the first 5 films, I would watch the 6th one. I would watch this one. If only to have a full 6-film marathon set, you know. If only to fully marathon it and all that shit. I'd do it. But this is the worst one of the franchise. And it's probably one of the worst sequels you'll ever watch. If you can think of a sequel in a beloved franchise that disappointed you, I will point you to the final chapter and say that this would have disappointed you more. It was lazy. It rewrote everything, practically, from the first 5 films. It dropped everything interesting, everything that you had built up until this point. You dropped in favor of something completely different, just for the sake of the plot twist. You're not M. Night Shyamalan. You're not gonna do a twist good like that. And we even bitch at at Shyamalan's twists. But this was one of the most needless twists. You had a finale set up. You had the schlocky epic ending that we wanted. You had it. The people who enjoyed Retribution wanted the ending that we saw at the end of Retribution. We wanted that. We wanted to see that story. That was why we kept clamoring for a 6th film. We wanted to see that final battle. We didn't want to see this. I didn't want to see this. But when it's whatever, creative differences, expectational differences. I guess the moral of the story is don't get your hopes up when you see anything. Don't get your hopes up. Don't build any expectations, because your expectations are probably not going to be met. You're going to think about things differently from a creative perspective. You're going to expect different things than what you're going to get. Because even from my expectations, given this film franchise's reputation of schlock and all of that stuff, even my expectations were not met. I already had a low bar, and what I got was even lower. This is not a satisfying ending to the Resident Evil franchise. I would rather we not have even gotten this film, and we just had the headcanon to Retribution. This has been the Audiocast Resident Evil film series. This is part 6. If I do a part 7, it'll be about the CGI films, which are far superior to these movies. Far superior. Signing off, and remember, be imaginative. More imaginative than this.